Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's me, Tremaine, and you guys are back on the channel for another weekly market forecast. Super amazing to have you guys back, guys. It's been another awesome week. We have new developments in structure, and so that just means that we're going to be evolving as the structure has been developing, guys, and we're going to be adjusting our directional biases according to the development in structure. So for today's weekly market breakdown, guys, we're gonna get into 5 different pairs. So we're gonna go through the DXY, Aussie CAD, Swiss yen, New Zealand dollar CAD, and New Zealand dollar JPY. And we've added the DXY back to our weekly market forecast because there is interesting stuff happening on the DXY. And you guys know that we like to keep this as educational as possible. And there's a lot for us to speak about on the DXY. So let's get into the DXY, guys. We'll keep to the 4-hour, guys, and we'll go into the structure here. So let's look at some higher time frame structure. So we've identified this important key resistance area. Now we were looking at this, guys, from a daily perspective, and from a daily perspective, we've identified our important lower structures. So our very important swing lows from a higher time frame perspective. Now we're looking at where is the cause of this break of structure. So yes, we do have these swing highs up here, but these swing highs ended up creating a low. We then have a lower high, and this lower high is the cause of the break of structure. So all the sellers, or rather we can say that the sellers that were able to send prices below our levels of structure, higher time frame levels of structure, originated from this swing high over here, because this is the swing high that moved to the downside that impulsively broke our support structure. So what we've done is we've marked out this area as an area of value, and we've also kind of just taken into account our market closes up in this area from a daily perspective. So we've isolated a nice sell sensitive zone where we've seen sellers come into the market previously, even being able to violate some important support structures over here. So we know that this is an important sell sensitive area from a higher time frame perspective. Now when we come into our most recent price action, guys, what we can see is, if we just have a look at structure quickly, we have these extreme highs over here, we have these extreme lows. We then see prices coming up and then starting to ascend. We see some momentum to the downside, violating some support structures, and then we see prices begin to push to the upside and violate some resistance areas. So we clearly see that yes, we've seen a nice move to the downside, we've seen a nice impulse to the upside, but ever since price found buyers at this area, ever since price found sellers, my mistake, guys, at this area, we've then seen prices correcting to the upside, with sellers, I guess, just being within this market or showing that they're here. Now, what we've done is we've accommodated for our extreme lower structures. We've isolated the support trend line. We've then accommodated for our extreme resistance structures, and we've isolated this resistance trend line. And if we can see what's been going on here, guys, we are coming towards this higher time frame resistance area that we assume is a sell sensitive area. Now from that area, because it is a sell sensitive area, we can be expecting some bearish reactions from the market in this area for a move to the downside. What other additional confluences do we have? We do have the confluence, I guess, of this expanding structure that we see over here. The expanding structure will also be at a resistance area. We will also have the confluence of being at some higher time frame resistance, and we've seen the nature of this overall structure, that this structure on the DXY started its corrective price action from these structural highs. We see highs being broken and closed above, prices breaking and closing back below highs. We see that happening throughout here. We then also have these extreme highs over here, where we see prices basically pushing down from, coming up, giving us some equal highs, and then pushing down and violating our structure. So we have some more liquidity that was generated that price just took out. So what we'll be paying attention to is obviously our two most important things: how price is moving to a level of structure, and then obviously what price does at that level of structure. So the kind of setup that we're looking for, guys, is just to see prices reacting in the direction that we're looking for once we see either confirmation of a new downtrend or confirmation of a corrective structure, confirming that momentum has come in towards the downside, and when prices are moving to the upside, we're moving to the upside correctively. Once we see this kind of a setup and price giving us reason to sell, we'll be looking for some continuation of some dollar weakness. So we'll basically just be looking, long story short, guys, on the DXY, we do have a bearish bias based on the structure, but our bearish bias will only give us an entry once this market presents to us a setup that really honestly aligns in the direction that we're looking to trade. So whether that comes in the form of trend being in the direction that we're looking to trade, or whether that comes in the form of a structure that gives us a bearish bias or that confirms our bearish bias, we will be looking to see what are prices doing now that we're in this area of sell sensitivity. We've seen buyers coming into this market impulsively, but now what price does at this area here will give us information on whether or not we should hold on to this bearish bias, or should we accommodate and adjust as the market develops. Like for example, if we do get a nice corrective retest, do we need to accommodate for this price action and then align ourselves on the bullish side of things? That's the information that we're going to get. But as the structure stands, what we can objectively see on our chart is a nice expanding structure with the potential to complete at a third touch, which is also in a nice higher time frame resistance area. So based off the structure and the information that we can derive from the DXY, guys, we're going to be bearish bias over the course of next week, obviously waiting for that sell setup. Now that we've discussed the DXY, guys, let's get on to our currency pairs. We're gonna start off with Aussie CAD. And guys, on Aussie CAD, if we just mention what we have here on the daily, so what we have on the daily, just looking at the most recent price action, and that's kind of what I would like to place an importance on in today's session, is that we need to be also accommodating and adjusting to the momentum and the way structures developing in our most recent price action. What market is doing right now is more important than anything the market has ever done ever before, because what the market is showing us right now is an interpretation of people's decisions. People are going to make decisions slightly differently to how they have in the past, and so this current information holds more weight to us. Now let's get into what's been happening here on Aussie CAD, guys. On the daily, what we can see is prices moving down. So we know that we're in some type of a downtrend, but if we look at the structure, we'll get an idea as to what is the nature of this downtrend. So we come in from the top, we establish our lows, we establish highs, we establish new lower lows, lower highs, we have a set of equal lows and a set of equal highs. We then have a new low. After we have this new low, we see prices breaking and closing back above our previous lower structures that have been violated. We then have a new lower low. After we've seen this lower low, what do we have here? We have a new higher high from this market. So most recent price action coming and breaking above a previous resistance area. So clearly within this descending structure that has been breaking structure, first of all very correctively, now we are beginning to see resistance areas being violated. That to us shows us that buyers are present. There are buyers that are able to push prices above previous resistance areas where we've seen sellers holding prices down from. So to come into, guys, just the nature of our structure. So you guys have seen that daily support trend line that we have going in there. So we're coming and we're approaching that third touch on that daily support structure, as well as on our 4 hour. What we have is this nice momentum to the upside, giving us that violation of resistance, a small sign of strength. And if we just look at the difference in the nature of this price action compared to this price action, we can see that this is a lot more corrective than our previous impulsive price action that violated our resistance areas. We can also conclude that when we are seeing lower structures being created, prices have broken and closed below lower structures and broken and closed back above these lower structures. So in addition, confirming our corrective price action to the downside. Now that we are approaching all of these support and resistance areas. We're gonna isolate, or we've used this one red candlestick over there to identify some lower time frame structure, so that we can also slap on some resistance, some support rather, in this case over here, to identify where could our potential third touch of this structure be. So that's our bias, guys. Based off all of that higher time frame reasoning that we've put together, we're going to be bullish bias on Aussie CAD over the course of next week. What we need to wait for is for price to come into or come close to our point of interest, and then we look for structure that supports this directional bias. So whether we find that reversal structure that gives us a beautiful entry, whether it comes in the form of maybe a risk entry or a reduced risk entry, we will be looking for those bullish bias setups. Even if we don't get that nice corrective structure that gives us a beautiful reversal, what we will be looking for in addition is to see obviously what prices are doing at lower structures. If prices break and close below lower structures, we see a nice impulsive break back above these structures and that corrective move testing our previous support areas. That is another potential setup that will give us reason to buy into any AUD strength here on Aussie CAD. So guys, we've got a beautiful bullish bias on Aussie CAD. We have structure that does support this bias as well. Objective things that we can see on our chart that will only change as the structure develops and warrants us to look and identify different natures in price action. Guys, bullish bias for Aussie CAD over the course of next week. We're going to be waiting for that reversal structure. Let's get into the next pair that we're going to have a look at, and that will be Swiss yen. Let's go into some Swiss yen. So guys, Swiss yen from a daily perspective, from a high time frame perspective, you guys can see we have the support trend line coming in there. We also had a resistance trend line in here, but I guess it's not so important for this analysis and this forecast. So our third touch of this resistance trend line resulted in a nice move to the downside, giving us some beautiful momentum at that third touch of our ascending structure. Now that we have that momentum, we're going to speak about just the most recent price action and conclude, I guess, just based off the objective structure that we can see, what directional bias we're going to be holding over the course of next week. So let's go down onto a 4 hour so that we can speak about the structure, see the structure just a little bit more clearly. So what we have here on the 4 hour, like we spoke about, guys, is this beautiful momentum to the downside, pushing prices, violating those support structures. Now, after we've had that momentum, we've seen prices basically moving sideways. We've seen highs and lower structures being created within extreme highs and extreme lows, or in this case, extreme lows and extreme highs. What we've seen in addition is these lows being violated to the downside and these extreme highs being violated to the upside. So we've expanded these extreme lows and these extreme highs just a little bit wider, and that's what price has done. So we can conclude that we're in some sort of a corrective structure, and this corrective structure has an expanding nature. Now we're gonna just speak about the nature of what's been going on inside of this price action here on a 4 hour. If we just look at the general swings of this corrective structure, we'll see that Swiss yen has been giving us a lot of momentum, and then momentum to the downside, momentum to the upside, momentum down, momentum up, momentum down, momentum up, and then I guess maybe you can call this a small pullback, but we had a small correction here, and then we've had that momentum again. Then we have more momentum to the downside, and most recently we've entered some long consolidation period. We haven't seen price action being this undecisive ever since we've entered this bigger, larger corrective structure. So we're seeing a lot of undecisiveness here on Swiss yen. What can we conclude based off this undecisiveness? We can conclude that maybe Swiss yen is preparing for something big, is preparing for that momentum to come in. Now, which direction have we concluded that we've seen objectively momentum coming in? We've seen momentum coming in towards the downside. So exactly that, we want to trade in the direction of the momentum that we've seen, guys. Looking at our most recent price action here on the 4 hour, what we also have in confluence, guys, is we've had a market pushing up, creating resistance, creating support. We then see a failure of buyers to create new prices, so we have that lower high, and what do we see next? We see sellers being able to violate previous support structures where we see buyers seeing value. So we now have This 4-hour chart also trending in the direction of the larger, higher time frame sell side momentum that we're looking to take. So we have a lot of confluences, I guess, to be looking for these sell setups. We also have some resistance over here that I just marked out, kind of minor resistance. We can expect this resistance to kind of just be cracked above, so that we at least come into this area of value, our previous support structures that have not been retested, that can now be retested, and then we see that bearish momentum to the downside. So this is the setup, guys, that we're looking for on Swiss yen. We're looking for that sell side momentum based off, or rather concluding that we could see that potential impulse correction, impulse nature of price that price normally loves to do. We also know that we've been at the third touch of that daily up channel. We also know that these ascending structures break to the downside. Now, because of all of these reasons, guys, I'm gonna align myself on the sell side of things, as much as there is still the possibility for prices to come up and expand the range, and then we see the sell side momentum. If prices are going to come in and tap an area, this is the first area where we might see that bearish reaction from. And so if that bearish momentum does come into the market, I definitely want to be in whenever I can get in. So guys, this is the bias on Swiss yen, guys. We're going to be looking for that sell side momentum to kick in once prices tap into our previous support areas and treat them as resistance, giving us a beautiful setup that obviously aligns in the direction we are looking for. Now that we've spoken about Swiss yen, guys, let's get into some New Zealand dollar CAD. And on New Zealand dollar CAD, we still have some of our analysis from this morning session, so I do apologize that you guys did see this before. As much as you guys already have seen the directional bias that we're going to take on this pair, I guess it's still going to be so valuable to go into the exact reasons why we have this directional bias, because that's what's more important than you guys knowing just the direction that we're going to take in the course of next week. So let's get into some Aussie CAD, guys. So I mean some New Zealand dollar CAD. Aussie CAD is on my mind. But anyway, so let's get into this. So looking at the structure here, what we can conclude is that yes, prices are moving to the downside, but ever since prices came into this region over here, so creating this resistance up here, what we've seen, guys, is prices kind of moving to the side. So we've seen prices creating structure within these extreme highs and within these extreme lows here. We've only ever seen structure being created within those two resistance areas. What we can also see is prices just not failing to close above this resistance area, but yes, grabbing all of those buyers or all of those sellers that have been in the market, or stopping out the sellers and grabbing in the buyers. We've seen that happen there and there again. Prices poking above this level but failing to close above. Now that we've concluded that, you guys saw that we have a bullish bias on this pair, and you can hear me speaking about prices to failing to break some resistance areas. When we drop down to the 4-hour, guys, we're going to conclude why we have a bullish bias on this pair. So now that you guys can see what we have here on the 4-hour, what we can conclude is that there is some sort of an uptrend. So we see prices coming in from these support structures: resistance, support, resistance, support, resistance, support, resistance, support. So we see prices respecting this level of support. So we see prices creating first level of support down there, second level of support. We're at the third level of support, so we're still higher than these other previous higher lows. So we're still within this potential uptrend. Yes, price is failing to break above our resistance areas, but if we look within the structure and see where the momentum is, we clearly see corrective price action followed by an impulsive move to the upside, violating resistance areas, more corrective price action, violating our resistance areas impulsively. And I guess here we see some sellers coming in, but we just seen the buyers coming back. Yes, sellers even gave us a new lower low, guys, but look at the nature of this lower low. This lower low was not a break and close below this level of structure. It was also grabbing. So we're grabbing all of the sellers that were looking to sell stop below here, and we're stopping out all of the buyers that managed to get in on this momentum that came in initially. So we're still seeing buyers coming in, we're still seeing an uptrend. Now what we need to wait for is for that bullish biased setup. So because we don't have some clear structure to identify here, we're just going to have a look at our support and resistance. So we see support, we see equal lows, We see prices smashing those equal lows, giving us a new lower low. What we've seen after that is obviously prices breaking and closing back above our previous support structures that we violated. If sellers were in control of this market, sellers would be able to hold prices below previous areas, which is obviously our resistance. Sellers would be able to hold prices below a previous area where buyers have seen value. If buyers have seen value here before and buyers are still in there and are able to push prices above an area that they've previously seen value in, it means that some of these buyers that got in there, maybe they're probably still in there. And so the buyers are there, guys. We can't ignore that the buyers are there and the sellers are not fully in control. So what we need to be doing here in this case is waiting for price to give us that reversal structure, to give us some confirmation to enter in the direction that we're looking to take this setup, whether it comes in the form of a beautiful corrective structure, a nice corrective structure, whether it comes in the form of a double bottom structure, whether it comes in the form of tapping previous support areas, or whatever the case is. Bullish bias structure for all of these, or rather for all of the reasoning that we've discussed based off our top-down analysis. So all we need to do on New Zealand dollar CAD is just wait for a setup that gives us an entry to trade this direction that we concluded based off our top-down analysis. Let's get into the last pair that we're going to have a look at today, guys, and that is New Zealand dollar JPY. Now we also have some stuff over here. Apologies for not deleting all of that. So on the 4-hour, guys, what we have here on New Zealand dollar JPY is we do have this market that has been in some sort of a downtrend. So we see prices are moving to the downside. Looking at major structure, we have support, we have resistance, we have new support, we have new resistance, and we have a new lower low. Yes, we can confirm this as a swing high because we have a new lower low that came lower than that previous low there. So that is a current major structure that we also have here on New Zealand dollar JPY. And I guess our network has disappeared, so we'll just give it a second. There we go, our network is back. So on New Zealand dollar JPY, we were concluding that yes, we are in a higher time frame downtrend. But now let's discuss the nature of this downtrend. What we see is our important support structures. There's our important support structures. We can even look at these equal lows. Guys, equal lows don't have to be to the pip equal lows. One can be lower, one can be slightly higher. But if they generally within the same price region, they can be considered as equal lows. We see these beautiful set of equal lows being violated, prices breaking and closing below and prices breaking and closing back above structure. So we know that this is some corrective descending price action. Now that we've concluded that this price action is corrective, we've isolated a structure out of it. So taking into account our important support structures over here, taking into account as well our important resistance areas over here, and then obviously isolating this nice beautiful descending structure. So looking at price action, guys, we've been pushing to the downside. Prices are close to a region where we could see some buyers coming into the market. So this is our dynamic support, our trend line, our support trend line. Yes, it is a level of structure that we should be looking for a reaction from. So because we're at this level of structure, guys, we're going to be more bullish than we're going to be bearish at this moment in time. But take into account that we're going to take this position with two different directional biases. We are going to be short-term bullish, so waiting for price action to allow us to enter into a bullish bias trade. Once we get into this bullish bias trade, we'll look to ride price action to this resistance area, and once price gets to this resistance area, we'll observe to see if we find price giving us reason to continue to the downside. Because we are seeing this momentum pushing, violating our lower structures, guys, we do also want to be trading in the direction of this momentum. So guys, we're gonna be short-term bullish, looking for prices to react off these levels, maybe hopefully give us an entry. But nonetheless, regardless of whether or not we get a bullish entry in this case here, we're going to be looking at previous support structures to act as resistance and give us potential opportunities to maybe continue this trend to the downside. So this is our long-term bias, guys, but we're also going to be looking to buy off any support structures that give us a nice beautiful entry, any entry that will allow us to fit a nice beautiful risk to reward ratio of 1:3 and gives us a beautiful structure that we can objectively identify on our chart will be a good setup. So that's kind of what I'm looking for here on New Zealand dollar JPY, guys. Short-term bullish bias into a long-term bearish bias. So guys, we have reached the conclusion of this week's weekly market analysis. Hopefully you guys have received the value that was intended for you guys. Hopefully you guys have kind of learned something new aside from just understanding where we are looking to trade in the course of next week. Hopefully I've added something to your trading toolbox. And guys, if you've received the value, definitely drop this video a like. Let me know that you guys did benefit from the content that you guys came across. And otherwise, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. I will appreciate it, guys. This is Tremaine, your FX Chasers mentor. I will see you guys in the future videos. Thanks so much and for watching until the end, guys. Cheers.